Why don't we move on though to a Hulu show? We talked about the first three episodes that were dropped back in November. A Teacher, the Hannah Fidel TV series. Also did a short movie which you can find on Hulu if you want to.
Sundance movie.
This wrapped up a 10 episode run, um, and I, I found myself incredibly disappointed, especially from where the show started. And I think the content already is a hard one to sit with because you're talking about as they kind of very clearly lay out with the friend teacher who Kate Mara
Mhm.
shares what's going on. That's a huge abuse of power, and that you're really dealing with like a huge uh, unacceptable dynamic between these two in terms of their sexual relationship. And um, that already was like kind of not my favorite thing to watch. And then you kind of take the last like three episodes of this series, which felt so just like shoehorned in and just kind of like they felt like they had to put it in there just so that they didn't get too much criticism for the series. And it just felt like a total misfire in a lot of ways for me. How are you feeling as you finished up A Teacher?
Yeah, I mean, I was already lukewarm coming in after we saw those first three episodes.
Hmm.
FX on Hulu. Then you get the subsequent weekly drops, and I was skeptical of this premise being deep enough to warrant 10 episodes. And I will give them credit for doing short episodes. Every one is
Yes.
sub 30 minutes, like substantially under 30 minutes.
Hmm.
The 30-minute drama is certainly rare, and I think it's actually done well. So it's not actually that much runtime, despite being 10 episodes. Yet it still felt stretched thin through the
Hmm.
first two-thirds of it, and then somehow felt really rushed at the end. And that pacing problem, I think, really harms the show from trying to achieve like moments. Like it had some high moments that you think if they were reworked, this show could have landed way stronger,
Hmm.
but it just never really gets there. And that's equally disappointing because of how difficult the subject matter is to sit with and process, as you said.
Yeah, I think where maybe the show, going back to those pacing problems you talked about, kind of went off the rails for me, or was moving in the wrong direction for me, is the interesting thing is the fallout to me. The how they rationalize this to the people in their lives afterwards, how Eric especially kind of deals with this trauma of being a victim of this inappropriate relationship and this not I guess you can say not non-consensual relationship since he's not 18 when it begins.
Right.
And the fact that we really only get three episodes of kind of seeing where Eric's at with that, and a good majority of one of those episodes is focused on how Claire is dealing with that fallout, which I'm not very sympathetic to her at all. It just kind of to me felt like they spent more time fetishizing this, you know, f- uh, female teacher with a young male student relationship, and like kind of
Mhm.
emphasizing that rather than looking at the the point of the thing, which should be to show how this actually is a very damaging thing to this young person.
Yeah. And I think that the strongest stuff is in the beginning because it's revealed like to the world, when
Mhm.
Claire spills the beans. That's in episode 5. So, oh, in theory, we got half the season to deal with this. But like, going up to episode 5, I actually think they build up that relationship pretty well. Again, it's a little stretched out for me, but
Mhm.
I at least I guess I understood this attraction, this connection they had, to the point where when Mara's spilling the beans while kind of tipsy to her coworker, you're like subconsciously being like, "Oh, don't do that."
Mhm.
It's like that's going to be bad for you, even though that's like a fucked up thing to think about, right? It's like, why would I root against her getting away with this, right?
Yeah.
But then at that point, we don't get the other side for Nick Robinson's character enough. Like, I'm just told he had a hard time with it. I
Mhm.
don't really hear that enough. Like, I don't like see that pan out, like he just struggled.
Yep.
Like, so I'm told. Like that's all I got out of it from him.
Yeah, you really only get to see him in college putting his well-being at risk a lot and not seeming to really give a shit about himself.
Like
Which
none of that was that special to me. Like, oh, he's a young college kid being reckless. Oh,
right.
that's new and noteworthy to me. Like it wasn't enough.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think they did try to like show how he had like very little regard for himself at that point, as he was doing things like hanging on to the top of a car that
Right.
was going like, I don't know, 70 miles per hour and getting thrown off it. But the thing is, by the time we get to him in the last episode, he basically has to spell out to Claire, "Oh, this really affected me," and it's almost kind of like the whole part of him like actually confronting how this thing affected him and the pain that he was feeling as a result of this, being a victim of this relationship, and him like working through that and starting to move on with his life, or starting to process that, is all just kind of yada 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 and then told to us, and then the show's over. And literally, I when we were reviewing this, I thought it was 11 episodes, because that 10th episode ends so abruptly with him just leaving that restaurant, that I felt it was totally rushed and very poorly done. And the thing is, I felt like Kate Mara and Nick Robinson gave pretty good performances. It wasn't, I don't think anything to them not doing the roles well. I think it was more so the script, and like you said, the pacing
Mm.
was just totally off throughout.
Yep.
So huge disappointment for me. Not really content I would want to engage with all the time anyway, especially with the subject matter, but real miss. So I don't know. Not a good time for that show. But any last thoughts before we move on to some better stuff, maybe?
Do not make it an anthology series, please.
Oh God, I hope not.